Club all day, all right, I got 4 right here. Behind you.
That one's done. Good.
Got 2 ready back here.
2 here.
Sorry.
Here you go, got another one right back here. Right there.
Good. Like it, mine. Thank you very much.
Hey, this sound system sounds like... But hey, I got a cousin who knows a guy who hooks us up with all our musical necessities.
Yeah, my credit cards are maxed out. We're not charging for food yet, so we're going to have to wait on the sound system.
Yeah, but you look happy, baby, don't you?
So happy. So happy.
Yeah, that's what something is.
I got one.
Whoa. That's burnt.
So? They're not paying for it?
On me. Get off the truck. You got this?
Yeah, I got it. Do your thing.
Slow down for a second. Is this boring to you?
No, I like it.
Yeah, well, I love it. Everything that's good that's happened to me in my life came because of that. I might not do everything great in my life. Okay, I'm not perfect. I'm not the best husband. And I'm sorry if I wasn't the best father. But I'm good at this. And I want to share this with you. I want to teach you what I learned. I get to touch people's lives with what I do. And it keeps me going, and I love it. And I think if you give it a shot, you might love it too.
Yeah, sure.
Now, should we have served that sandwich?
No, Chef.
That's my son. Get back in there. We got some hungry people. He's ready to cook.
James chapter 3. James chapter 3. We've been talking about what is the greatest show. And while you may be thinking of a circus, and you think, well, what does that have to do with church? Just attend a few weeks. But anyway, in all reality, the idea that James is talking about is the faith that we say we have needs to be revealed to the world around us. It needs to be shown. And so the idea of the greatest show is that we who have accepted the gospel as truth by faith in what Jesus did, we need to be showing what that means. We need to be showing all of these things, the endurance that we talked about, engagement in the Word, being the example that we're called to be. Today, we're going to talk about this idea of excellence. In the video clip that you just saw, the chef was not willing to allow a sandwich that was less than excellent to be served out to his public. And the young man was like, but they're not paying for it. What difference does it make? It's free to them, so we should just serve anything. In essence, that's what we were getting. So he took him outside and he said, no, listen. We need to be doing the best that we can. And we need to be having this sense of excellence. And while we understand that we can't always do it perfectly, we need to be striving to do what we can to produce the excellence. A sandwich out of a shop, how much more important, if we can all understand that you appreciate a kitchen that would not serve you burned food, even if it was free, how much more do we understand then, we who hold the gospel, who proclaim faith in our lives, need to be dispensing excellence in our lives. And so our truth today is this, that the excellence that people can see begins with the excellence they can't see. The excellence that people do see, it all begins with excellence they're not seeing, the excellence in your own life. The integrity that you have inside your life will then come out. And let me help you understand, we can fake it for a while, but when the pressure cooker of life is on, faking it won't make it. And when the pressure is on and you're being pressed from every side and you're being manipulated by your job or your family or your friendships or the world itself, and you get into that pressure cooker of life, the true you is squeezed out. What are they going to see then? Because the truth is, the excellence that they're going to see begins really with the excellence they're not seeing. That integrity of mind, that integrity of sight in private areas, that integrity of heart, that integrity inside. All those things they don't see is where the excellence they can see really begins. And that's at the heart of what James is talking about. And he's going to be talking about a physical attribute, a physical body piece that we all have. And very few of us have any idea of what to do with it. But the excellence that people can see begins with the excellence that they can't see. Jesus told a parable of a landowner that was handing out money to his servants, and he handed out what he considered 5 portions to one, 3 portions to one, and 1 portion to another individual. And he went away and he came back. And the Bible say that when he came back, he wanted to call them into account. And the one that had 5 had invested that money, and we don't know how or where or to what degree, but he invested it and brought a return on the money. Now, the scriptures talk about in this parable that Jesus is telling that he doubled his money, that he invested the 5 and he brought back 5 additionally. And so the landowner said, thank you. Thank you for being faithful in what I've given you. And the 3, he went and invested it, and he brought 3 more back. So in essence, he started with 3, he got 6. Thank you. Thank you for your faithfulness. And the one was scared, and he didn't do anything with his. He went out and he buried it in the ground. And so when the guy came back, he dug it up and brought it. And the landowner's like, what is this? He said, well, I was scared. I know that you are a shrewd businessman, and that's not a negative term. I know how you do business. He's not accusing. And he said, I was just worried that I would fail you. And so I'm at least giving you back what you gave me. To which the landowner said, you wicked and lazy servant, you didn't even try to do anything with it. So he took it away from him and said, to the faithful, in a little you gain more. So we see the truth here of what Jesus is getting at, that James is going to come back to. I want you to hear something at the front end of this message, and it's this. It's not about perfection. Now, we get all wrapped up in perfection. We get wrapped up in the OCD cleanliness of our house. We get wrapped up in the OCD nature of our desk. Don't go to my office. We get wrapped up into this nature of everything's got to be excellent and everything has to be perfect. I don't want you to confuse excellence and perfect today. It's not about getting it all right. Because let me let you in on a very important secret. If we could have done it perfectly, we didn't need Jesus. See, it's not about perfection. It's about consistency. Am I consistently doing the things that God's called me to do? Not am I doing it perfectly. Excellence comes over time. And the more consistent you are, the stronger you get at it. But it's not about doing it perfectly. It's about doing it consistently and letting the power of God work in you and develop you over time so that you can be stronger and stronger and stronger. Because we all stumble. Look with me in James chapter 3, and let's walk through these verses together. He begins by saying, not many should become teachers, my brothers, because you know that we'll receive a stricter judgment. Look in verse 2. For we all stumble in many ways. That's not a question, is it? Look at the grammar. That's a statement. We all stumble in many ways. Let that bless you this morning. It's not an excuse. Let's not use it as one. But it is a reality, isn't it? We stumble. We can look back over the last 24 hours and probably name a few. And they don't have to be gross sins. They could be the minor ones as we as humanity level them. Because we level them, God doesn't. But we it's just a little bitty old sin over here. But we all stumble. And this is what he's beginning with. Look, we all stumble. And if anyone doesn't stumble in what he says, then he is mature, able also to control the whole body. And so he begins with this preface. And he says, look, we all stumble in many ways. But if there was anything that if we focused on, if there's any one thing that if we could just control this, it would make everything else sort of fall in line. And he says, if we could just control our mouth, things could get a lot simpler quick. If we could just control the tongue, if we just didn't stumble with what we said, then it would start to fall in line. And he's going to give examples of how something small in comparison to the rest of the item is still in control of it. And what he's telling us is this. So often, we want to focus on this exterior. And this is what the Pharisees did. It's why Jesus called them whitewashed tombs. Because you look good on the inside, but you're dead on the inside. You look good out. You got everything. You're following all the rules, but your heart's not in it. Why? Because the excellence that you can see begins with the excellence you can't see. And he says, look, we focus on all the right actions and all the right thinking and all the right doing. And James says, look, let me just break this down for you. Let me just make this simple. Just control what you say, and everything else will start to fall in line, because so the tongue goes, so does the rest of you. And of course, we speak in a lot of different ways today. In this time frame, he didn't have social media. And so they were just talking about physically controlling their tongue. But I'm suggesting to you today that we need to control the words that come out of our life. And they can come out of our mouth, and they can come out of our fingertips on that keyboard. But we've got to control what we say, because when you post something on Facebook or Twitter, or you put a picture of something, you're saying something about yourself and possibly saying something about somebody else. Now, hear me. I'm not against social media. I think it's a great tool that we can use in a variety of wonderful ways. What I'm suggesting today is that to follow Scripture, we need to be careful what we're putting out there. Because if we can control what we say, and if we don't stumble there, we're going to find it easier to not stumble in a lot of other areas. So look what he says. Now, if we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we direct their whole bodies. A bit, 6 inches, 7 inches long, in the mouth of a 2,000-pound horse, you can control that thing. It's such a large animal. Powerful animal, fast animal, but you can control them with a 6-inch piece of metal in the back of their mouth. And if you pull it one way, he's going to go that way. And if you pull it the other way, he's going to go that way. Look what else he says. And consider ships. Though very large and driven by fierce winds, they are guided by a very small rudder wherever the pilot directs. Wherever he directs. This huge ship, you've got the pilot with the wheel. And as he turns the wheel, he's moving that rudder back and forth. And wherever that rudder is guiding, that's where the whole ship is going to go. Such a small item controls such a large one. So this is what he's getting at. Look, if we can control the tongue, then we're well on our way to consistency, and we're well on our way to excellence. Because the control of the tongue starts on the inside, not the outside. See, what you say begins in your heart. What you say is guided through your mind and your thought life. And what comes out of your mouth is not where that originated. The vocality of it all is not the origination of that, but it's an attitude that you have inside. It's a heart position that you have and hold that causes you to have the words that come out of your mouth. So this is why he's saying we've got to be careful what we say. Let's be honest, we've all stumbled in it. We all stumble in this sometimes. And it doesn't have to be necessarily mean or hateful or prejudicial language. It doesn't have to be vulgar language to stumble. We can just be overly critical and cause a stumble. In fact, we can cause somebody else to stumble, and we don't even intend that, but it happens. See, this is the power of the words that come out of our mouth from our lives. We've got to be careful with what we say. Why? Because the excellence that people can see begins with the excellence that they can't see. So too, though the tongue is a small part of the body, it boasts great things. Consider how a small fire sets ablaze a large forest, and the tongue is a fire. The tongue, a world of unrighteousness, is placed among our members. It stains the whole body, sets the course of life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. We see here this sense of fire. And what is he talking about with the tongue? He's talking about the tongue has a character of wickedness. It is tied to such unrighteousness. It's far faster to see the unrighteousness of our lives when it comes out of our tongue than in any other capacity. People can see the unrighteousness of our lives swifter through the tongue and our speech than anything. That's why we have to be so considerate of what we say and how we say it and when we say it, not only what we say. It's so very important. Because if we're going to be showing the gospel of Christ, and if we are going to talk it up, we've got to walk it out. It's what we learned last time together. He continues in that thinking, and he says, look, you've got to control what you say. And I know sometimes we get to a point in life where the filters just are removed. Get a replacement. You need a filter. You say, well, I've earned the right to not have to have a filter. No, you haven't. You haven't earned the right to remove a filter. We all need to filter what we say. We need to make sure that nothing egregious comes out, nothing overly critical comes out, nothing hateful comes out, nothing harmful comes out, nothing vulgar comes out. We've got to be cautious because we never know who's listening. We never know who's listening. You may be thinking you're having a private conversation. It's going to go public real quick. There is nothing private in this world any longer. Just understand that. If you wouldn't say it in front of a whole group, why would you say it one-on-one? That doesn't mean that we don't need to share some truth with somebody, but even Paul over in Ephesus says, look, you can share the truth, but do it in love. Do it in love. Make sure that what you're saying is out of a sense of love. Why? Because the character of the tongue is a world of wickedness. Its influence is such that it can be a small spark that sets a large forest on fire. There's nothing that sets a church on a negative fire faster than an assumption that is spoken out loud. Now, think about that. You assume something, and then you say it out loud. Nothing can set a group on fire faster than that. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But the influence is such that it can set a whole forest afire, and its affiliation is hell itself. It says at the end of verse 6, it's set on fire by hell itself. Do you understand how critical a component the tongue is? In the Old Testament it says, both springs of life and death come from the tongue. Light and dark come from the tongue. Good and bad come from the tongue. Healing and cursing come from the tongue. And at every point in turn it says that's not how it's supposed to be. We used to call it talking out of the other side of your mouth. All that simply means is that the life that you say you're living isn't being matched by the words coming out of your mouth. So we have to be very careful. in what we say, when we say it, how we say it, to whom we even say it. If we could just control the tongue. Every kind of animal, bird, reptile, and fish is tamed and has been tamed by humankind, but no one can tame the tongue. It's a restless evil full of deadly poison. With the tongue we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in God's likeness. Blessing and cursing come out of the same mouth. My brothers and sisters, these things should not be this way. Does a spring pour out sweet and bitter water from the same opening? Can a fig tree produce olives, my brothers and sisters? Or a grapevine produce figs? Neither can a saltwater spring yield fresh water. There's three things that the tongue can do, and I want to share them quickly with you this morning. First, it boasts. It can boast. Because that's how we boast, isn't it? We talk this big game. And I know we can all go to the sports clips and we can all go to those highlight reels and say, well, it ain't bragging if you can do it. Yeah, it's still bragging. Doesn't matter if you can do it. It's still bragging, and we've got to be cautious how we are bragging about things in our life. We live in a moment in a time where we self-promote without even thinking about it. We want to self-promote. We want to try to get the upper hand, and we do it at work, and we do it in our friendship circles, and we do it at family reunions, and we want to do it at the dinner table. We want to do it in every place. We want to do it on the ball field. Maybe you want to do it in the classroom. But you want to get an upper hand. You want to be seen as something better. You want to be best. You know what? And there's nothing wrong with ambition. I want to be better. I want to do better. I want to be excellent. Just be careful that we're not boasting and bragging in the process of what we're doing, because nothing can hurt us further. I learned a long time ago to try to keep my mouth shut about the abilities that I have. We all have abilities. God-given abilities. But it doesn't mean that we need to let everybody know about the abilities we have. Yes, we should use them for the Lord. Yes, we should use them for His gospel. Yes, we should use it to His glory. But it doesn't mean we have to brag about it. Many of you know that I enjoy golf. And years ago, I hadn't learned this truth yet until I was humbled. You know, isn't that how it goes? We often don't learn the truths Mama told us until we get humbled in the moment. And then suddenly it's like, oh, wow. Maybe Mama knew something. Yeah, you laugh. But I played fairly well. And I got up, we got into a competition on the golf course one day. And we were coming out to the first tee, and I began to mouth off. And I began to talk about how our team was this and that, and you know how nobody can outdrive me on this team, and you can't outdrive me, and it was just awful. And you look at me like, man, you're the preacher? Dang. No, I'm human too. I had to learn just like you got to learn sometimes. And I remember stepping up to the first tee box, and man, we had been laying it thick. And I shanked it. And for those of you who don't understand golf language, you can hear the tone. It did not go, it went straight. It just went straight left. It landed on a green, but it wasn't a green I was aiming for. I learned to shut up right quick. Do I love to play golf? Yes. Am I okay? Sure. Now, when my father-in-law and I get out, and my son, and we're out, now there's a whole lot of talk, but that's just family, and that's just how life is. Yeah, you get it. That's just family. No, that's... But seriously, we got to be careful. Because you never know when the next humbling moment will arrive. So the tongue can boast. It can damage. We've seen this fire that's burning a forest. I mean, it's one thing to guide a horse and to guide a ship, but then he moves into damages and how this small spark, just a few words can light up an entire room. A few words can light up an entire movement. A few words can start a war if we're not careful. So we've got to be cautious because of the damage that we can do. We use words to criticize, to complain, to cut down, and we can set in motion things that we never saw coming. Just a little bitty thing that you didn't think meant anything can really cause a major problem. The last home that we lived in Oklahoma, we had a pond down in front of the house. And it would have all kinds of weeds and reeds. It'd be like 20 feet tall. And I got so tired of messing with it. In the summertime, I'd get behind mowing that. And so it'd be higher than I was. And I hated it. And I thought, you know what? I've got some gasoline and a match. And I'm just going to keep it contained. It's just going to be right here inside the pond. There's water. We're going to be all good. And so I walked around the rim of the pond, and I drizzled some gas. It was diesel, actually, and I drizzled some diesel, some fuel out there, and I thought, man, this is going to save my day. I mean, this is going to save hours off of my day today, trying to go to mow down because the weed eater wouldn't get it, and I was having to hand cut a lot. I mean, it was horrible. And so I go back up, and I get the match, and I come back down, and I light the match, and I throw it, and poof! And man, it's beautiful. Man, I am thinking I'm going to make the ball game on time today. This is awesome. And I mean, it poof, and it goes all the way around, and the thing, and I'm like stepping back, going, man, this was genius. This was awesome. I'm like, this is great. Until it wasn't. And I don't exactly know how it happened, but it jumped out of the pond, and it ran down the hill, and it was heading for my neighbor's house. And then the wind shifted, and my other neighbor up the hill hadn't mowed the yard yet. And so I began to watch a firestorm working. And so I go for the hose to try to stop this and realize that I'm 2 hoses shy of length of where I need to be. I call the fire department. We got a problem. My neighbor's not home. My other neighbor, it's now lapping the side of his house. All from one little match and some fuel. You got to realize there's always some fuel around you. You've got fuel with your friends. You've got some fuel in your family. You've got some fuel at work. You've got some fuel in the neighborhood with the dogs that are pooping on your yard that you don't like. We all got some fuel. And it only takes a few sparks of a couple words, and you can start a whole firestorm. You see why James says if we could just control our tongue, everything else would fall in line. Because it boasts and it can damage and it even stains. It says that it stains the whole body. It corrupts. It defiles. I'll give you an example. I had a brand new pair of dress shorts. And we were traveling, and I had those on, and I was getting ready to hook up the trailer to the back of the truck. And it had been squeaking a little bit, so I took a little bit of grease and I put it on the ball just to make sure that in the connection it wouldn't overheat and it would have some, wouldn't have too much friction there as we were traveling down the road. And so I I decide that, I got to go to the other side, and I'm too lazy to walk around the outside of the truck. And so I try to cross over the hitch. I don't wear those shorts anymore. Not in public. They are stained, they are defiled, they are corrupted. Because grease got all over those shorts. Now they're not fit for public consumption. I hope that the words you say are fit for public consumption. I sure hope that you've got your tongue under control. Because it can boast and it can damage and it can stain. See, we got to realize that the excellence that people can see begins with the excellence that they can't see. And what you say starts deeper on the inside of who you are. In fact, what you say speaks a lot to who you are on the inside. So we just have to be careful. So I want to give you something just to consider, to think about. And this is floated around the internet, and it's nothing new, but it's something good for us to consider, and it's to think before you speak. To ask yourself just a few questions before you say something. And it rings true, but it almost is like, do any of you remember, did your mama ever tell you, or did anybody ever teach you that before you say something you should count to 10? Yeah, I didn't do that either for a long time. And I sense that many of us didn't. I'd count to 10, but I'd still be as mad as I was, and so I'd still say something stupid. Then I ran across this, and if I ask these while I'm counting to 10, it certainly helps before I say anything, because the first question is it true? Is what you're about to say true? Now, we can't stop there. We can't say, oh yeah, it's true. Man, what I've got to say, it's absolutely truth. The best gossip still is true. It's just truth being shared out of context. The best gossip can be true, but it still damages. Which leads us to the second question. It may be true, but is it helpful? Is what you're going to say helpful to the situation? Is it helpful to the person? Because sometimes we just want to dump what's in our head. We just want to dump it out, and we're so worked up, we're so agitated, we're so in the moment that we just want to mind dump, and so we just start spouting off things. And you can do this in committee work, you can do this in class time, you can do this in family time, you can do this, and it may not be helpful at all to the context. Is it inspiring? Well, no, I can't say what I'm about to say is inspiring. But they need to hear it. And see, this is how we rationalize everything, isn't it? Well, but they need to hear that. They might. Frame it in a way that coaches somebody up rather than cuts somebody down. This is how we control. This is how we bring excellence to what we say. Is it necessary? Does it really need to be said, or do you just need to say it? See, there's a difference. There's a difference, and I've been on both sides of that line, and so have you. There have been times when I just need to say it. Right? Is it necessary? Could it wait? Could it be something that instead of having a public demonstration, you could have a private moment with an individual and it'd be much more inspiring in that moment? It's much more needed maybe in that time frame rather than for public consumption. And finally, is it kind? Is it kind? I would love to have some of our national and state leadership run this test. I would love for every one of us to run this test. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Why? Because the way we speak makes a difference. The way that we speak makes a difference. And the words that we use make a difference. It's not just couching negativity in a positive tone. It's not only the way we say it, it's what we say, the words we use. They make a difference. And by words, kingdoms rise and can fall. Why should we be concerned? Because the witness that we have is fragile. We're in a time when our world rejects everything about Christianity. You've heard it maybe in some reading and some other things. We were postmodern and then we were post-Christian. I was in a conversation the other day and it was brought to my attention that maybe we are actually now moving full circle back to being we're living in a pre-Christian time. Think about that. Well, I'm a believer. It's the time of Christ. If you look around our world much, you'll find that more and more and more people have no clue of anything about Jesus. So how are we going to be excellent this week? How will we be excellent this week? I suggest that we look at our words. Evaluate what you're going to say. Think about it. Evaluate what you post before you hit enter. And think about it. We need to stop processing our emotions in a public forum like social media. We need to stop processing our anger publicly in that way. It's not helping anybody. We need to be careful. We need to be careful in what we text. Because nothing just goes away anymore. Let's be excellent this week. Say, how can I do that? It begins with a relationship with Jesus Christ, where we, for the very first time, come before God and say, God, I can't be excellent, but I believe that you can make me excellent. God, forgive me. I trust what Jesus did is satisfactory and satisfies what you require. So God, forgive me, lead me, take me, have me. That's how it starts. And oddly enough, that's kind of how it continues too. Staying in that relationship with God through prayer, through the reading of His Word, through obedience. Let's be excellent this week. What is God wanting you to be excellent in today?